We're delighted that you're all here and looking forward to a good program this afternoon. We'll have a couple of presentations and a break, and then a couple of more presentations, and we will take time for a couple of questions at the end of the presentation, so please, as you're listening, be thinking about what you might want to ask. We're very appreciative of having you join us for our Open Access Week programming. There is a lot going on and changes in publishing in this new century, and as we try to look ahead and anticipate what the impact will be of these trends on research and scholarly communications, so that we will be prepared here at the University of Florida to meet the needs of our faculty and students. Just to call attention to the program, obviously you're here this afternoon. We will have a keynote session from Mark McClellan, who's the Dean for Research at IFAS, and then a presentation about the UF Open Access Publishing Fund by Isabel Silver. And then, as I said, a brief break. And then additional presentations on maintaining author rights and assessing the future landscape for scholarly communication and on digital scholarship. And throughout there will be opportunities, as I say, for questions and certainly to get a snack outside and look at some of the poster sessions. I would encourage you also to be aware that there will be a session down at the Levin College of Law on Friday that you may find of interest, that will focus specifically on best practices for open access within law journals. Each discipline is sort of approaching open access in its own way and seeking what works best within its particular environment, so we're very excited about that. And we are also having a brief presentation on open access at the Faculty Senate tomorrow afternoon. Last April there was an initial presentation announcing that the Open Access Fund had been approved and that it would be starting in July, and now we're going to be following up appropriately in Open Access Week to let people know what has actually happened. In talking about new models for scholarly communication, it's very important to keep the focus on the fact that these are faculty-driven initiatives. This is not something that's coming from the library, although we're certainly facilitating it. It is an initiative that has come from faculty who have increasingly looked at the situation around them and have recognized that there really is a restriction on the flow of information through the current commercial publishing models. And as we have moved into open data and blogs and other types of things, they're very interested in seeing a wider distribution of their information. So we're happy to be in a role to help facilitate that and to help encourage discussion about it and how it works at the University of Florida, as well as what's happening at other institutions. One of the concerns that has arisen is that most agreements with commercial publishers require the transfer of the full copyright by the author to the publisher. And in doing that, the author is actually waiving his or her own rights to continue to use that material in their own classroom or in any other environments. And so beginning to question some of these standard publishing agreements and beginning to look at what kind of modification can be made to those agreements to preserve your rights as an author and the rights of UF as your home institution to continue to use that material is a part of the open access movement. So it's not only about publishing in open access journals, it's about really looking at how you, as an author trying to share your scholarship, can preserve and protect your rights for the future use of that content and not simply sign them away to a commercial publisher. So one of the things we'd like to call your attention to is that earlier this year, Dr. Guzik, who's the Senior VP of Health Affairs, had put out 2 articles. He puts out an article, a brief article every other week to all the faculty at the hospital and the Health Science Center on open access. They're linked from our open access website. And I think it's really interesting to see his own recognition of what open access means and how differently his own behavior, both as a researcher and as an author, has changed. He mentioned, for example, that he used to subscribe primarily through his memberships in professional societies to 10 print journals, and now he doesn't subscribe to any. He's using all of this information digitally. That's really, I think, representative of how many of us are changing the way that we use information. So as we look at how do we create and share our scholarly information and how do we preserve it for future use, the open access dialogue is a very important part of that. I think probably this audience could define open access without any assistance, but just to be sure that we're all using common language, generally speaking, open access literature is digital, online, free of charge to the readers so that it's broadly publicly available, free of most copyright and licensing restrictions. There are sometimes restrictions that at least require attribution if the material is reused or other restrictions of that type, but generally much more open, as the name would imply, than what you would find in a commercial journal. And generally, it is controlled by the author in a very different way than the author controls information in commercial publishing. So it shifts the ownership and responsibility to the author rather than to the publisher. Why is it so important to researchers? I think there's a number of reasons, one of which is we're all in a world where everything has speeded up, and we're trying to get information out faster and faster. And because research is itself a building block, where each researcher is building on the work of others, getting the information out quickly, not waiting. I mean, some of you who've had the experience of publishing in major print journals know the kind of lead time that can come between submitting an article, getting through peer review, getting in the queue for the issue that it's going to be in, and seeing significant elapsed times. And generally, the open access literature moves much more quickly because generally there isn't a print counterpart, and so they're moving things through much more quickly. And of course, it's automatically available online, so we're getting timely visibility, wider impact. And we've been very concerned, I think, as a broad research community about barriers to research. So some of you are probably aware of federal legislation that requires NIH-funded research to be made publicly available within 6 months after it's published in a commercial journal. But even there's a significant delay then between the people who are paying for those journals and have immediate access and the people who have paid through their taxes for the research but may not have as rapid an access to it. So overall, we believe that through open access, the research that you do can have greater impact and more rapid impact. UNESCO is one of the organizations that is actively encouraging a more global and open access. I mentioned the NIH mandate. There's a bill pending before Congress called the Federal Research Public Access Act, FERPA. You've probably heard the acronym more than you've heard the actual name. If passed, FERPA will require all federal agencies that do, I think it's over $100 million in research funding, to have similar provisions to the NIH funding to make sure that that research is publicly available. And we're beginning to see this replicate worldwide. So the Wellcome Trust for many years has now required that any research that it funds becomes immediately publicly available, and the Canadian Institute for Health are following similar models. I think this is something that has started heavily in the health sciences, but is spreading in many, many disciplines, and we will continue to see this grow. Many research universities have established university-wide open access policies which either encourage or mandate faculty to submit peer-reviewed articles to institutional repositories. One of the presentations later this afternoon will be describing the institutional repository that we have here at UF. We are working through the University Library Committee on developing an open access policy which will go up through the faculty and through the administration, and we hope that we will have a policy of that type here in the university within the next year or so. We are in the process of hiring a new librarian for scholarly communications. Some of you are aware that the president and the provost funded 100 new faculty positions. One of the positions that was funded in that manner was a scholarly communications position who will help assist through a staff position, a faculty position of moving open access through UF and helping authors at UF take advantage of it. So going back again to the need for public access. I'm going to read you a quote here from Dr. Guzik that I think really captures it. He says, first, universities, the federal government, and the taxpayers pay twice for scholarly research under the current model because they pay for the production of the research at the university through federal grants, and then they pay again for it in the form of scholarly journals where they're purchasing access back to that content to feed the next round of research. What happens is that most research is publicly funded by national agencies and public universities, but is then given away freely to the marketplace, and then the public must buy it back at exorbitant rates. This is his word. Since I see a lot of the invoices that we pay in the library, I would have to agree with that characterization. And even then, the public doesn't own the material and can't always freely use it. This is a barrier to public access and not in the interests of the common good. And he points out that in both Sweden and Denmark, there are proposals for national open access policies, and of course that is of particular interest in developing countries because it gives them much more access to this information. He also notes that despite the digitization of conventional journals, which decreased the cost of production, the price of scholarly journals for university libraries has far outpaced the consumer price index due to the licensing fees and annual price increases. Median expenditures of Association for Research Libraries members, and we are an ARL member, increased 4.4 million between 2000, from 4.4 million in 2000 to 7.1 million in 2008. And I can say that that's very much what is happening with us as well. We're very typical in that. And most of that has come through these licensing arrangements. So especially in an age of flat and decreasing budgets, it's unsustainable. So having our universities support open access is another way of also making sure that we can keep that research available and that we're not priced out of the market of getting back for you the research you need to build on. I think it's really important to understand what I said earlier, which is this is a faculty-driven initiative, and no policy can be effective if the faculty doesn't understand and support it, and unless the university itself embraces open access as part of its mission, and the faculty treat it as a routine part of the way we do business and the way they do their research and promulgate their scholarship. So with this in mind, the University Library Committee has supported the development of open access through the creation of the institutional repository with a user-friendly submission. It's essentially as easy as attaching a document to your email. It's very easy to put information into the repository. And we are joining other top-tier universities with open access publishing funds. So Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, Columbia, and UF are among the universities now that support open access publishing by their faculty through a publishing fund. So we're really pleased that our university is among those that's taking a leadership role in this way. So there's two ways you can participate. One is by depositing your work in the institutional repository, and you'll hear, as I said, more about that this afternoon. And the other is when you're considering publishing to look at open access journals and see if there are open access journals that are appropriate for your scholarship. And I would guess then maybe the third way would be to say, at least look a little critically if you're going to publish in a commercial journal at what the licensing agreement is, and be aware that you don't absolutely have to sign away your total rights to what you're doing. You can give them first publishing rights without giving them complete rights for that material. So I hope you will participate in the institutional repository. I hope you'll consider applying to the Open Access Fund to help you with open access publishing. And I think that you will find as you watch this evolve, and by the time we get to open access next week, I hope next year, I hope you'll see that there's been enormous progress on this campus in terms of awareness and participation in open access. I hope you will feel free to contact either Isabel or myself, and eventually the scholarly communications librarian when she or he comes on board, for any assistance that we can provide to you.